New Jersey State Police detective and friends. Jonathan Littman doesn't want to talk to you or anyone on the phone again. He is done with New Jersey. But words go all ways, and he has no desire to waste taxes or time unless it's necessary, which protecting constitutional rights of everyone, especially those in your state's most racist in the country prison system, is of most necessity. Jonathan Littman doesn't want to talk to you because the truth is this has taken its toll on his physical health, not his mental health. That's not to say he is the picture of mental health, but he is what he was when he was 8. He didn't respond with violence then, and he wouldn't now because he is living proof it accomplishes nothing. This message isn't exactly for you or your state, New Jersey State Police. It's for all of you. Jonathan has been pretty clear, which is why you guys have to waste so much money on him when it would have been cheaper to lock him up in a constitutional rights violating jail or psych ward you all pretend exists for help but is really just extrajudicial lockup. This is performance, not for Jonathan. The truth is the only real psychological disorder he currently has is survivor's guilt, whatever that is. He feels terrible that he survived and has this privilege that prevents him from being next to his kind, the homeless. This is not true always. If you talk to him up until the age of 30, he'd have had plenty of other problems, none that would lead to violent behavior or physical harm. You will never find him responding to violence with violence. But at the age of 23, he did cross that line of words and should have went to jail for it, or at least faced more punishment. Jonathan accepts that. And in a strange way, his suffering is deserved for that. The person he committed this crime of words knew him though, and knew he wasn't violent. She knew what he went through and empathized with it for as long as she could. It possibly prevented him from getting the help holding him accountable for that one criminal offensive words could have granted him, but she didn't want to hurt him more than necessary to protect herself. Mark Littman has a disorder that makes him say what is needed to defend himself, to get his bigoted ways. He has whatever Trump might have. Susan Littman sent many emails in which she confirmed she knew what was going on and decided it was best to let Jonathan go through it because she suffered her own things and had to live with it by thinking they made her stronger, even if they clearly didn't. Susan Littman had a negative view of the world and its suffering people. She was just mistaken capitalism could make it all okay for her son and success and power would make up for his tough skin and his tough life. It's likely Jonathan's father lied to you, New Jersey State Police, but didn't mean to and can't help himself. We don't think it matters, but from what he has told Jonathan, he said things that would conflict with his own wife's published statements. He does have a disorder that he claims distorts or erases his memory. This is not to say he said anything that was particularly that bad, but if what you people are attempting to do is likely, which it seems, he said some things you might try to turn around as you do. If you talk to Susan Littman, you would eventually have to come to the conclusion Mark and Susan Littman are probably as guilty as Lacey Township or Ocean County. Your intentions of having good motives are not believable. You were clearly fishing for ways to disenfranchise Jonathan and to get some sort of court order to remove his will and force medicate him. The only thing his parents can possibly add is you trying to force a court to put Jonathan in a mental institution by getting them to indict Jonathan's mental health. You should know Susan Littman was recorded admitting she was willing to use court to violate Jonathan Littman's First Amendment right to talk about her family's involvement in covering up their abuse. There is plenty of evidence of the ulterior motives of the Littmans. There's a video today of Mark Littman attempting coercion to remove what Jonathan Littman's jurisdiction determined to be First Amendment rights. It's pretty clear he only informed Jonathan today to disenfranchise him out of his First Amendment rights and to try to blame his problems on a disability that Los Angeles has determined on about 12 occasions are not worthy of removing his constitutional rights. For the record, it's very unlikely this medication your state attempts to coerce will work. That it's likely that there is something about Jonathan's biology or makeup that will make typical prescriptions given to lazy, thoughtless people afraid of confronting their trauma ineffective. Also, for the record, It's possible that Jonathan did suffer some sort of head trauma that did damage to his brain and removed the part of his personality that made him deal with this trauma with narcissistic motivations and goals of self-service, that changed his attitude of his abuse. And his feelings, that abuse entitled him to earn this privilege and Hollywood wealth potential people sold to him. As remedy for his traumas. That some sort of head trauma made his abuse stop being funny. That's life. That's why these things need to be stopped, these abuses and cover-ups. Potential head traumas don't change what Jonathan went through. They don't change the past. Only the future's interpretation of that past. It doesn't change the goal. Head trauma after the abuse after the original doesn't change the government's culpability. It's not Jonathan's fault something happened to him in public school. It's not his fault a disability afterward made the past that actually happened more effective on him. It's also possible Jonathan Lippman didn't suffer any head trauma. At this point, none of you have a right to know. Mark and Susan want to keep blaming things on him falling out of a pool one time, but it doesn't change anything if it did happen. We stop persecution and abuse as a society, or psychologists claim to want to, because one day you might lose a part of your brain, or might be put in a nursing home, or you might lose your legs, and now you can no longer run to your distractions that prevent you from thinking about what Ocean County did to you and people like you. Now more has been shared with you, government law enforcement agent, than any psychologist has been shared about Jonathan. Because Jonathan, a psychologist, who would ever listen to them? More has been shared with you than any psych ward would ever listen to. Medication will never be accepted as an aid, but dialogue is always a good thing in normal circumstances that law enforcement isn't trying to subvert or disenfranchise you and your constitutional rights. For the record, Jonathan Lippman asked Lacey Township to pay for a therapist for 3 years and his housing for 2 years as a last-ditch effort about a month before the New Jersey State Police, this is being directly was involved. About a year and a half into this protest, his health care is terrible. He can't afford such aids that actually help. Aren't lazy medications that serve a system that doesn't want to spend money on certain people. So we asked Lacey Township to help, in quotes, them. They'd rather waste your time and money. Jonathan has had such survivor's guilt over the last decade. He has, for the better part of a decade now, preferred to join his homeless peoples rather than stay housed. The Littmans have paid for his bills to cover that up for some time. Other people would see it differently, of course, but you, detective, only spoke to one of them briefly and have no understanding of their inability to consider anyone but themselves. All the governments in New Jersey can do to stop this is throw one or two of the governments involved, and there are many, under the bus they deserve. Jonathan Littman doesn't think he is Jesus or anything. It might sound like that sometimes, but it's all a demonstration of rights and wrongs. They, the Spanish version, as in you all, told Jonathan to move to California, to be with people like him, to go tell his story to Hollywood rather than his abusers. But maybe he wasn't destined to escape to California for professional reasons. Maybe he moved to California because he knew it was the only place he could mostly escape New Jersey persecution of Jewish, mentally ill, and other groups. The 5150 law might violate. Obviously, Los Angeles doesn't do that. But it has at least provided for his own escape. The 5150 laws might violate the Constitution for 3 days, but a healthy person can also use it for protection. That's not to say it doesn't violate people's rights, because most people aren't healthy. Most people aren't able to keep their composure as a room full of nurses lie to you to take medication to force you, lie to you about how things work. In the hospital, to force you to take medication that is intended to remove them from liability of violating rights, because taking meds is an admission of need. A distorted one that is used against you. It's not easy to survive these hospitals intentionally putting you in a room with a schizophrenic, made nocturnal by their over medications, who's trying to masturbate on you. It's just added now. It's not easy to deal with nurses lying for 3 days. You will talk to a psychiatrist as they try to medicate you instead, no matter how many times you ask for one politely. It's not easy to live politely so you can tell them this is all a protest, and you don't, because you've been withholding for the last couple of days. Your high school put you in there because, that sounds fucking crazy. Not that there's anything wrong with being crazy, and not that anybody who is crazy should be listened to. It's not easy to live off the 1,200 to 1,400 calorie a day diet these hospitals feed, obviously making people more crazy. You only get 3 days in California to break a person. And no matter how bad the conditions are in Los Angeles psych wards, they will never be post 9/11 Ocean County, New Jersey. If the state of New Jersey wants to end this need to investigate a person for exercising their rights, the only thing it can do is tell the truth. We could have a debate about Jonathan Littman's morality, but he's not the one with power here. The power has always been with all of you, government. The power to end this protest, the power to hurt people, the power of the gun. There are 3 judges here now who need to be told how constitutional rights works by other jurisdictions and other law enforcement agencies. 3 departments. 3 police departments. Is Jonathan Littman's behavior questionable? Sure, but so are others' behaviors. Why aren't they being questioned? And given the help they need? You, Detective Harrison, needed to tell a judge that saying a person will get justice for their misconduct is First Amendment protected speech. This is riddled with this story, this protest is riddled with absurdities such as that one. That a judge doesn't think a person can tell them they will face justice for violating their constitutional rights. And I think we're almost done with this protest. And all that needs to be filed is restraining orders against all these governments. And also, obviously, finishing all the writing that will obviously be the only thing that gets closure and accountability, because we only pay attention to fame and notoriety and things that can make money. And if you want the media to cover anything, you need to be Kim Kardashian.